Mr. Yanoff, good to see you.
Sup? Thanks. Happy to be seen. Press subscribe and like.
Press the bell up here if you want notifications.
Subscribe and like, and you can see all of my new stuff. You can't hug me, but you can press subscribe and like.
Look at how good you look, Shashi. What's with the beard? Is this quarantine, Shashi?
Yes, that's where the viruses are hiding, so they can get lost.
Welcome to another episode of Consultants Saying Things. I am Chris Lockhart. Today I'm joined by Shashi Sharmali, Phil Yanoff, and a new podcast member, Carol Hamilton. I want to give Carol a welcome. Shashi, I want to throw to you because this was your idea, right? You know, this seemed like a timely, important subject to address, right? Because of the implications for work and for clients and for consultants in general. So can you give us like the 1-minute overview of your thoughts on this topic?
Absolutely. And I think, for last couple of weeks, country and in fact, many parts of the world has come to a standstill. We have seen changes in our personal life. We have seen changes in our work life. We have seen changes in our priorities between work, home, personal, family, and stuff like that. So I thought it will be a good idea for us to get together and understand the impact of this coronavirus globally in the various aspects of life, whether it's a personal life, whether it's professional life, clients, what does it mean for consultants? What does it mean for technology consultants? Should they be scared that, big meltdown is coming and they need to be prepared for that, or they should be excited there'll be some other opportunities open up? Maybe there are some skills which they need to develop, which will differentiate them from many others in the market. So we can have some meaningful conversations with different skill set. And I'm excited to, and would welcome Carol also in the team. So looking forward to a great conversation. Let's get rolling.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I mean, you mentioned, technology consultants, and I mean, our audience in the past has been, largely, technology related, on the technology side of the house. Carol, I know you don't just deal with technology consultants, or maybe that's not even your primary audience. Can you give us like the 2 minutes on what you do and your perspective on this subject?
Sure. As it turns out, my biggest client actually is a global technology consulting firm. So I'm pretty heavy in the space, and my take on it is about communications. It's all about the messaging. How are you crafting the message? Where are you delivering it? How are you delivering it? And of course, at this point, it's when are you delivering it? So, and then it falls into that executive coaching standpoint, because there's leaders being tested in ways they've never been tested. And so that's my shtick, is as I focus predominantly on communications and then listen to brilliant people like you help guide what you see based on when do we deliver these messages. And it's been an extraordinary time. Not my favorite, but extraordinary.
The thing is, we can't get each other face to face, right? So that's been one of the things that's been wrapped around what I do, is how do I bring people face to face? And, we've always valued that strongly over everything else. That stopped. All of my stuff in that space has stopped. So I'm having to do what we do completely different. I mean, my old model simply is completely on hold.
Let's open this up and talk about the impact to work, right? Yeah. And Phil, yeah. I mean, you just talked about the impact to your business.
Right.
How are you accommodating that? Is this a fundamental change, or is this a transient, a temporary thing that you're looking at?
Well, I mean, we don't know how long this moment in time is, but there's something going on that's different in here. And so my thing is, people came to us for help before. They were looking for helps and connections because either they were looking to build a tech business, or they were looking to talk to their peers, kind of the folks that we address here, the consultants who are talking to each other and kind of helping them out with that. And then, they're, again, people looking for jobs, looking to build their business, that kind of stuff. And I can't do that way. And so now I got to do something else. And so quite frankly, what I'm using is Zoom to talk to folks. And the good news is if I show up in a moment like this, people are well lit, you can see their face, I can see whether we're connecting or not connecting, and we can still be of help. So this week I've been talking to folks who are looking for work. For them, this is kind of stalled, but I've talked to other people in their business. I've talked to both people who have millions of dollars worth of business that immediately went to hold when things go to quarantine, right? So that immediately went to stop. And I've talked to other folks who's like their business in this space as a service thing, they're unaffected. They said, I've been working at home. I've been doing that for a while. I really can't tell any difference from day to day because basically the work comes in, I'm doing my work, I'm shipping it back out. And they feel unaffected by it, other than the fact that they may have kids in another room of the house that they didn't have before.
We are used to working from home. So global management consulting firms are fairly good at, setting up infrastructure and letting their employees work from home because, well, if they want their employees to work for 16 hours a day, 10 hours in office, 6 hours at home. So we have already been doing that. It's not anything new for us. But what's different is at least once in a while, we used to go and have those meetings with our clients and things which you can do in person. It's very difficult to do it over the phone or over the web conferences and things like that. So that's like an interesting dimension, but I don't think that's a major problem. And I think world will be able to, our management consultants would be able to go past that barrier. So for us, it's not a major problem. The problem is more on the client side. And what we are hearing is many of our clients do not have this, complete culture of working from home. So they do not have infrastructure set up. They do not have, allowances where your people can work from home for 5 days a week. So for them, it's a significant learning curve because they try to balance. So work from home for them was probably 20%, 1 day a week, but the rest of the 4 days they used to be in the office. So that's a good balance for them as well. So now they're coming to us and saying that, can you educate us on how to optimize remote working, help us set up the infrastructure, help set up the operating model to support this. So those kind of service offerings are being asked from, my current company. And, we are looking at creating some of the offerings in those areas. It's opportunistic, but I think our client needs help and we will raise our hand to solve any problem they want us to.
So that's interesting. Oh, that's interesting because you talked about, the way of work for a consultant, this tip that is used to working remotely or virtually and making use of the tools and the technology. The clients maybe not so much. But I'm kind of interested in this idea of the face-to-face, right? Because and we've talked a little bit about this before. I'm a big believer in, I need to have, in order for me to establish rapport, right, and make a connection, we got to be together. We got to go get a drink. We gotta, we gotta shoot the shit in a conference room with whiteboards and, and yeah, as good as the tools are, I don't know that it's the same. I'll be perfectly honest with you. A simple.
So in that bit, Chris, I think you're right. It's not the same, but oh my God, how much better we are than when we were used to do conference calls, right?
Yes.
And basically when it was just a telephone, everyone's hiding. And so I never get to look. So, even now I'm thinking I'm several Zoom calls in, right? But I get to see Carol's eyes. I get to see Shashi's eyes. I get to see your eyes. Are you paying attention? Is this part of the conversation? Does this make sense to you? Are you puzzled? I get to see that by just looking at your face. So there is a lot that is lost. I don't get to smell you. I don't get to run my fingers through that really great hair. But that you'd have to do that yourself. But but the idea is I can see, is what I'm talking about landing? Do we understand each other or not? I think we're so much better off than where I remember being 10 years ago, for example.
I'm going to argue with you though, Phil, because while we do have the tools, and yes, it is a matter of bringing the skill set in, the hesitation that I'm seeing, I just got off the phone with a major client the other day who said, we have the WebEx, we have all the tools, we can't get people to turn their cameras on.
Oh
So
yeah,
this
absolutely. Well,
isn't just a matter of having the skill set. You've got to have the mindset that says, I'm willing to connect this way, even when hair and makeup aren't going to be here beforehand, even though you're going to see my kitchen, even though you're going to see my dog walk through or my spouse in their pajamas. There's a whole nother set that's gone on here. And now we add in kids, because while consultants are all used to working from home, they are not. They're also used to having childcare or schools, right? Go ahead, Shashi.
no,
So I think I want to highlight one thing. Sorry, Phil, just you raised few good points. First thing, Phil, I think if you remember when we were talking about digitization and all this, probably about a year ago, Chris, we had an extreme, right? We said on one side, Amazon, which is completely digital. On another side, you had like regular, stores, Acme around the block, which is completely physical. The final solution is a fine balance between the two. I believe that's where we are heading towards right now. Second point I want to make is, Carol, whatever you just said demands for corporate policies for employees to mandate that they need to work from home, and these are the policies or the protocols they need to follow. Right. So people will be more displaced. So right now I'm sitting on my dining table. You see my beautiful thing. If I turn the camera, you will say that where is he staying, right? So
yeah.
Wait, hold on a second. You just said you see my beautiful thing and you pointed at your head. Was that
okay.
Like
nice one. His logo, his crystal logo was back there or something.
Whatever, some mirror and stuff like that. But what I'm saying is it is going to demand a proper definition of corporate policies and the guidelines and ethics to work from home. And companies need to be a little bit considerate with a dog running by us or a child. They need to get used to those little nuances, as long as it doesn't hamper that. So we are going to find that right balance. I think time has come. We are going to do that. Sorry, go ahead.
So go ahead, Carol. I want to hear your response to that, and then I have sort of a follow-up question about your way of working, because it's a little bit different than the rest of us.
Well, and to that point, I think one of the pieces that we're really seeing, and this is right now, is the understanding that the longer this goes on, the more companies are going to benefit or see the potential benefits from not having their employees wrapped up in huge commutes, not having brick and mortar to support them. And it's going to change the cost factors of having to put everybody at home. It's easier to buy more internet than it is to buy more physical space. So I think that the mindset now that we're trying to talk about is assume this is going in for the long term. Because while consultants have been working, and tech people have been working from home for years, I think that those workers who weren't the Discover people, for example, that I think we were talking about earlier, or just other places that are sending people home, I think this is going to be the new norm. And so the skill set and to your point, Shashi, about putting in the mandates that this is what you're going to do are going to come along. But I still think you're going to get resistance to, well, I know I'm supposed to turn on my camera. I know I'm supposed to have eye contact with you. But, my dog ate my computer and I just can't. I think you're going to have so much resistance because there's something about a camera that is not the same as being in a room live. If I'm sitting there talking to Chris in a conference call, I can't see myself. But as soon as I turn on a camera, I get to see me, and people get just freaked out about that. So that unto itself is a new skill.
So there's a couple things I take notes, right, when I hear great ideas. I do want to come back. I want to talk about sort of the costs and the opportunities around this, because I have a couple hypotheses on this that I've been sharing with, well, let's see, no one, myself in this room, right? As I social distance. But and I do want to ask you a question here in a second, but I also wanted to comment on what you just said, and that sort of was a throwback to what I was saying earlier. I think look, if you are in a conference room at a table with other people, you have a sense of the presence of other people in the room. And when you have that sense, you're not going to pick your nose, right? Or, whatever, that sort of, you have a sense of being look, I love you all, but like, this is not the same. There is no sense of presence here, right? I mean, honestly. And so I think you can become, unconscious or subconsciously, whatever, one of the conscious, below the regular conscious level, you're making decisions and doing things that ordinarily you wouldn't do with that sense of presence with people in the room. So maybe there's some thoughts on that. But Carol, I did want to sort of wrap up sort of talking about this way of working and talk about your way of working, because Shashi and I both travel a lot. I know you travel a lot. But I think your travel's a little bit different because, well, Shashi and I will go to a client and execute an engagement over many, many weeks or months, or in my case, years, right? You know, there's that. I know you tend to do slightly different types of engagements. So can you give us like the 2 minutes on how it's impacting your way of work?
Oh yeah, I mean, this wiped out a calendar overnight. I was actually in Paris when the first, when Italy was at the beginning of its meltdown, and then they were starting to get an outbreak in Paris, and we actually interrupted a senior level program to send everybody home because we had no idea what the governments were going to do, and nobody wanted to get the borders shut down on them. So I spent a lot of time in facilitated conversations with anything from 3 of the C-suite or to 100 of other levels. So a huge piece of my business model was to be in person, and a huge piece of that was also in the training of the skills on how to be in person, how to be influential, how are you connecting, and coming back to the opening conversation, the handshake is a huge part of it. There is an intimacy that have the web of a hand touch another web of a hand, and in a 6-second handshake, it is a profound amount of intimacy that happens in bonding, and we don't have that now. And we have artificial eye contact. It's better than nothing, and far better, to Phil's point, than it was. But we're missing all of the dynamics of communication, the visual, the movement of the hands, all of those pieces. So we're limited hugely. Now, my business model would also include on-site executive coaching, partially because of what you're just saying. If you're going deep inside somebody's experience and getting into some challenging issues, it's really nice to get a 6-hour day, one-on-one, just letting the conversation go where it needs to go, talking about solutions with time and energy, and that's the kind of thing that is almost, in fact, it is impossible to recreate virtually. Nobody's going to sit on a WebEx or a Zoom call for 6 hours and have the same experience.
Right.
So we've had to pivot everything, and now we have to demonstrate everything we've ever taught. And the big calls we're getting now are, can you come on and take our group through what's an actually good conference call? Can you take our group and talk about how to get engagement without cameras and with them? We need both. And so those are the skill sets we're being called on now. And it's a very different model. Almost everything's going to be virtual.
I mean, it's fascinating. And I want to talk about technology in a little bit, right? Because I do think, look, I mean, there's a difference between doing a Zoom and, having a full Cisco Telepresence suite, right?
Yeah.
Sure.
Right. I mean, let's be honest, right?
Right.
And I mean, yes, I mean, I've been in sessions hosted by my company before where we have coaching and we have speakers in the room, and there's a dynamic quality to it because in the room I have a field of vision that's like this, and I can see someone over here, and how their body language is reacting, and I can see someone over here, maybe not simultaneously, but sort of at the same time. This is very like, I can see this in this camera.
Right.
And that's it.
Right.
No, and Chris, we, like most of the time when we are in a client presentation, client executive presentation, more than the content of the presentation, we are observing their body language. By that, we know whether we are going in the right direction or not. So I kind of agree with you. One thing I want to point out is we are used to web conferencing, but hosting a workshop online is not easy. We are looking at the tools. You can get the tools, best tools of the world, but executing or running a workshop or something what Phil does, doing it virtually, it's not easy. I think you will not even get close to what you desire.
And I want to pick up on that thread because, and I think we could talk about the technical aspects of this forever, but you mentioned Phil, and I know, Phil's business model is let's get everyone in a room and have a conversation.
Yes.
Phil, I saw an experiment that was run on Thursday of this past week in which, why don't you tell us about that experiment? Because it looked pretty good.
And I'll tell you, it really was an experiment, right? I wanted to see, does this work? Can it work? And it just was an amazing thing to watch. And that was, I've got a group of cats that you would know well that get together and smoke cigars typically on Thursday night. Been doing this for almost 12 years. In 2 or 3 weeks, it'll be 12 years. And, you were there at the beginning, so you remember. But that whole thing was, and I thought, you know what? We're quarantined. Nothing's going to happen. This will just go quiet. But I had it ended up being 3 different people reach out to me and say, we got to do something. We have got to get this group together. And I said, okay, this is nuts, but I'll tell you what, I'll run a Zoom call. And basically, in the end, we had 18 people show up on a Zoom call, to each of them sit in their own backyards with a lit cigar and a drink in their hands and talk about what they're drinking or smoking. Now, here is the thing about that, right? Again, I wouldn't have believed this was going to work, but it did. I actually got back notes from the participants on how there were ways in which this was better than being around the room. I mean, they're not saying we would do this instead of it, but they're saying, you know, it was really cool because when we have a table and there's 20 people at it, I don't get to hear the conversation at the other end of the table. But this was a perfect round table environment, and everybody got to talk, everybody got to hear everybody, and it actually worked.
And
That's
I'm
pretty
hearing
cool.
it's all over the place. That one of the biggest losses over the past 2 weeks is the socialization.
Yeah.
That people are just missing casual conversation. I had a client yesterday say that they actually leave a line open so that as each of them is working from home, they can just say, "Hey, Tom, what do you think about that?" without having to do connections. They're just leaving it open, which has got to be devastating to the internet. But nevertheless, they're trying to recreate that comfort, that casualness that you're talking about, which doesn't require all this formality of let's set up a meeting. It's just conversation.
Yeah, so that's to your point on that bit, right? So Chris, you and I did that yesterday, I guess it was. And I said it's just let's pop and make it. But the idea is removing the barriers to communication is the trick, right? I mean, or lowering the barriers, right? So it's already hard. We no longer have that ability of like, I just bumped into some dude in the hall, and so I talked to him in the hall.
Right.
We always talk about water cooler. I don't know if that still gets done, but this morning at 7:00 in the morning, I'm going up and down Main Street in Greenville, and I bump into a guy who wants to do something with me. And so of course, we do it 6 feet apart, but we have that conversation. But those are lost because we have lost my favorite word, propinquity, right? We are just, that ability to bump into each other is lost.
Wait a second.
Propinquity.
What was that word? You got to spell that for
Yeah, I'm going to need a spelling on that, please.
Wait. This is the sort of thing Bill Benson normally does. Are you taking up the mantle for?
No. The word thing, that's my thing. The obscure reference to a book no one's read, that's Bill's thing.
Oh, I miss Bill. I got to meet Bill.
He's not even here to defend himself. Come on. What was that word for the?
You've actually read the book, How to Get Dirt Off My Hands, right? No, now propinquity, right? That it's a combination of proximity and repeatability, right?
Yeah.
Showing up and touching and being around people again and again and again, you build relationships, and we've lost propinquity, right? So we don't have that capability, and the idea is, well, how can we do that? So how can we lower the barrier? So like yesterday, I did a real casual thing with Carol, and I said, just pop, I'm here on the call. So I'm going to set up in my line, you said we can't be on the phone all the time, but I'm going to set up a thing where it says, I am sitting at my desk working, and if you want to zoom in onto me, here you can see that I'm here and available. Just pop in and talk if you want to talk, right? And you can do that with Zoom. I've run into another community that they keep a Zoom channel open 24 hours a day.
But all of you with these solutions are taking one thing for granted, which is internet bandwidth. It's not unlimited. If you are doing that, then probably you are stripping someone away from the bandwidth they need, probably a hospital or the provider right next door. So we got to be cautious of, I'm sorry to spoil the party, but we got to be cautious of those things. If we are trying to leverage this, it's not unlimited. We know network bandwidth is limited.
Right.
I paid for it.
Bill's cigar smoking party is killing people in Italy. Is that what you're saying, Shashi?
No, not keeping it open indefinite. Doing it 1 hour, 2 hours is fine.
I hear what you're saying. Don't forget, this is packet switch, and if there's not a bunch of data going over, it's compressed, and it's not taking up. A dead channel does not take up a bunch of bandwidth. But I understand your point. We shouldn't be tearing that away from everybody. Let's use this stuff responsibly.
What are those impacts from a technology perspective, and what are some ways that we can work around them?
Well, let me just say first, Chris, that this is more than a technology problem. It's a people problem.
Is it a people problem?
No, I think it really is a people problem. And so when I'm in this case, and I'm sorry I don't have my copy is across the room. I can't just grab it and reference it. But as a people, I mean, but the issue is, and I think that Carol is hitting this, right? And that is, there are people who are uncomfortable with this, uncomfortable with the idea. And so we have to get them, like I did with the cigar therapy thing. Thank you, people problem. Got that? Look at that. Written by Chris Lockhart.
I keep it right here. And I just
managed to keep, mine's across
available on Amazon. It maybe is pertinent now more than ever.
Yeah. But how do we get those barriers down? So again, I've had a successful experiment, but there's at least one person that didn't show up and their response was too geeky for me, right? And basically they're saying, I'm not comfortable with the technology. So my thing is, how do I create low stakes poker? How do I remove the barriers so it's easier? Now, let me just say, I've done the same thing with live events in the past, right? IT people do not naturally congregate and talk to one another. So I had to get over that barrier. I have to get them to say, look, man, this is easy. This is not good. I'm gonna take all the scary bits out of this. And I think we have to take the scary bits out of it as well. And I'm gonna tell you, I wrote notes on there. I said, all right, Carol and I need to get together and we need to do a little thing where we talk to people who aren't comfortable in their video conference because they're afraid of the kids, they're afraid of looking bad, they're afraid of sounding bad, they're afraid of how do I not have a bunch of other noise? Why am I not well lit? Who will I get to do my hair before I go on camera? Right?
Or just a simple, wow, am I really that ugly? Thing.
And the stakes are high. This is the thing that we got to remember too. This isn't a casual conversation where you say, well, am I going to be able to network? This is my boss, my clients are on the line seeing this.
Exactly.
No, I agree. I agree entirely. And my point is, how do I get all of that fear out of that for them? How do I get them over that bit? When Carol was talking about earlier about how do I equip my company, right? So, before it was, I had to have a laptop and maybe a VPN, but now I've got to include a headset. I got to include butterfly lighting, a step and repeat background, and then extras to come in and off the set as needed.
No, I was thinking, right? So I'm about to join a new firm in about a week's time. So as part of my onboarding, I just don't need laptop. I need a separate screen, which they need to provide me. I need a headset. So onboarding process has to, adapt to itself so that they equip a person based on whatever they need. Like last 1 week, I've been having challenges to being on the client call. We are completely forgetting multi-million kids who are getting online education right now.
Oh, that's right.
So my daughter is sitting, she is doing live streaming on Zoom because Zoom CEO has been nice and he gave all the schools access to Zoom free. So they do Zoom and all the video conference call. At the same time, I'm having my WebEx meeting and it's significantly delayed and I have to apologize because I think our infrastructure is still not yet equipped to take that kind of load completely. So that's the fundamental.
Right. And let's get back into you said something earlier, Shashi, that I really wanted to address, which you said, we've been doing this for years. Yeah. What we haven't done though, is had this as the only opportunity. Yeah. So maybe we've had those conference calls and I call them the eye rolling calls because nobody's excited about hearing about a conference call. Yeah. They could be, but they need techniques and skills to be able to manage it. But now it's the only option. So now your day has gone from suffering through a few calls to absolute misery of 24/7 of bad calls because the leadership is a huge issue in this. And that's where I come back to it's a people problem. And I think the solution in part is that but I think you got to start with the top because being on camera and being engaging, taking risks like asking questions and knowing how to do it in a way so you don't end up with that horrific career defining pause and knowing how to manage those kinds of things is something that's going to have to start at the top in a vulnerable place because that's what's going to let other levels be able to say, it's okay, I'm willing to be vulnerable too.
So we are talking, sorry.
No, I just, because on that thread, right? I mean, look, we've been talking about like, oh yeah, your personal skills and your EQ and all that's really important and stuff like that. But we all know people in leadership that have none of that stuff still today in 2020, right? Is this an inflection point in terms of maybe way of work or technology that needs to be in place, as Shashi was discussing, or as Carol was discussing? Is this an inflection point on, if you can't engage with an audience, no matter how smart you are, your day is just over, right? The clock's been ticking on you for a while, but now you're done.
And there are many people who can't adapt to this style of communication. It's not easy for, it's not cut for everyone. So some people are not that skilled, but some people just can't do it. They will have to pick up this new skill. So they will have more challenges than anything else.
Right. And this has been true for people who have been thrust into global leadership over the past 2 decades, where they've suddenly discovered that their leadership skills are very difficult to translate. I think the tech is the next translation. So now you're crossing cultures, you're crossing languages, you're crossing ideas, and now you're even crossing into what technology do you have, and how fast can the internet servers even keep up with all of this? This is absolutely a transition point. But I don't think, is it tech or is it human? I think it's both.
Yeah, it is. It is absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, tech
But
is for humans.
Is it an inflection point? In other words, is there no going back from this? It's a fundamental shift, permanent.
Well, I think it is in that. Well, one thing, what you said, is it an inflection point, right? So I think a bit of significance will be, oh, this just seems like it's what normal kind of looks like, and people won't care until, there'll be some big story about how somebody either got a great customer or lost a job because of something stupid on camera, right? That is absolutely going to happen, right? But in terms of this, not only are we going to get used to this because this is going to be protracted, right? We're not talking about 2 or 3 days. We're going to be at this for a while or a couple of whiles. So we're going to have to get good at it. But other thing is, it's getting rolled out to all of our kids, right? Everyone who's got a grade school age kid or a high school or whatever, middle high school, this technology is rolled out to them, and this is the way they're going to learn from their teachers. Yes. And the next generation, when they get into the workforce, they're going to go, well, what do you mean I got to go show up for that meeting? Why can't you just whether the word is still Zoom at that time, right? But it's, why can't you VidConf me in, which then will be 3D. They're just going to completely and utterly expect it.
Yeah, and then you cut down on the travel or commute time, so your number of hours left to actually do something increases significantly. Of course, you compromise on that human or personal touch to that. But I mean,
well, we'll still do that because we're driven to that, right? We want to accumulate, we want to congregate. But that is going to happen when it's easy, and we'll do that because we want to. But the fact is, if you just need to tell me something quick, why would you not Zoom that to me? Or if you need to even look me in the eye, but I can avoid travel time, why would you not Zoom me, right? It's going to be something different. We're not going to do our Christmas parties on Zoom, right? I mean, we're going to want to get together and share that time, that camaraderie face to face if we can.
I don't know. I was with a group of leaders, and they were sitting there having an argument. This is good leaders arguing about how to reward their people. And they were talking about, they'd given out all these money. There was a number of doing very well software leaders in there. And I raised my hand and said, why don't you take all those reward dollars that you want to give? They've already given a fair number. And I said, why don't you take what's left and put them in a room? Because what you're missing is, that's what people really want. They want to shake hands. They want to have casual conversation. They want to break bread together. And you'd have thought that I had suggested they paint themselves purple and go dancing in the streets. They were so surprised by that concept. And I thought, okay, this is where, and this was in the tech field, they just didn't even value that. So I think that there's going to need to be voices like yours, Phil, that say, don't forget the people.
And I mean, I agree with you, but there are some companies culturally who are very rigid, that they want, like Chris, it happens in our case, they want consultants to be there Monday to Friday all the time.
Right.
What they don't understand is they're spending very high dollars on people's travel and expenses as well. When you can be smart about it, plan ahead and, call that person for a day, come in the morning, go in the evening, do your workshop, whatever you need to do. So they will start opening up a lot more, because our client culture is going to change.
This new medium, or not new, but this expanded use of this type of technology is actually going to encourage us to ask more questions, because we don't have the benefit of being in the same room and getting the body language and quite right, and I don't know, pheromones or whatever, right? Like we don't have that luxury. So now we actually have to ask more questions. How are you feeling? I don't know, whatever the questions are with our clients.
Yeah, the escape zone is huge. And so let's take the video out of this. And there's all sorts of reasons and excuses they'll give you as to why they can't possibly be on video. And now you have no idea if they're there. And you don't know what's happening. You don't know if they're listening. You don't get to see their eyes. You don't even know if they're on the call. or if they're doing their emails, and you can pretty much assume they are. Whatever distraction is an option, you can assume they're being distracted, which means you have to do little things like use names, set them up for success. And this is one of my biggest arguments. I never want somebody to fail because of my system for communicating with them. So if I'm going to talk to Phil, I'm not going to say, so here's my big important point. Now, Phil, what do you think of that? I'm going to say, hey, Phil, in just a minute, I'd really like to get your thoughts on this. And so I'll be over there in a second to give you a chance to unmute. Now, he's also got a chance to think and to pay attention to what the question is. Right. And what I'm doing is I'm being a buddy. Right? I'm saying, here's my engagement. And by the way, Phil, this question is going to be about how you think, not a yes, no. Do you agree? Because if I say, do you agree? And Phil is the least bit of an introvert who doesn't want to make waves, I'm not going to hear what he really thinks. I'm not getting his genius out of him. These are the kinds of things that we've always needed as leadership, but they've never been more tested than when they're done by technology.
What can come out of this for the average technologist that may not like people?
Yeah, well, again, I think, for the people who are out there doing the work in this moment, I mean, a lot of times, what my concern for them is, are they staying connected with, the folks who are supplying them with that work and with the team members as they need to? Are they able to do that effectively? And the thing is, this can be quite uncomfortable. And, my tip for somebody in that space is to say, just admit that up front. Say, you know what? I'm going to do this Zoom call with you, but I'm going to tell you right away, I don't think my hair is going to be right. I've never done this before. I'm afraid of this be looking dumb even on this, but I'm willing to have this conversation with you. So if I get something wrong, let me know. And just up front say, I'm not quite okay. And the thing is, everyone will be appreciative of that because no one's okay at the moment, right? So just call that out where you can call that out. But is it an opportunity? It absolutely is. And again, I had the chance this week to be coaching somebody who is between gigs, right? So their whole thing is they were finishing off some work. It was timed poorly for them, right? They got to go find new work. And they clearly did not have the social wherewithal to get themselves ready to do what we're doing right now, which is talking to people on video to find that next gig. And for their skill set, it's going to involve some selling and some discovery. And they're going to have to be able to ask good questions and be able to interact with people in a way that they'll come to trust them. I think that's hard if you don't just start here practicing the skills. And quite frankly, just pull up a Zoom and talk to your neighbors or your kids or family members just to practice being on this space and saying, what do I get wrong? Again, get yourself into some low stakes poker games so that when you go to these one where the stakes matter, you'll be better at it.
So, I want to bring up sort of a perennial question I have on this thread, right? Which is, are those soft skills learnable?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's tractable. I don't think they came to it naturally, but I think if anybody who cares to learn can learn. I'm of the opinion that any ordinary skill that one human has acquired, another human. I get it. I might not perform at the top level. I might not be an Olympic athlete, but I can run down the street. It looks bad, but I can get it done. I can get the job done, right?
Are you going to come out looking like you're, the Steve Jobs of presenters on the first round? Absolutely not. And you may never get there. But that's not where the level of communication needs to happen. You don't need to be 100% awesome in order to be a good, impactful communicator. But you do need some core skills to make it not suck.
So, okay. So, we've talked about like the impact to working. We've talked about the importance of relationships and the face-to-face. We talked about some of the new tech that potentially could be applied to the new way of working. If we can we bring it home for each of us and sort of talk about personal impact for a minute, because we are human beings, right? So, I'll go first, right? I'll be honest with you. Shashi, you mentioned at the beginning, right? We're management consultants. We're used to sort of working from home. I am, right? Fridays, right? Typically. But this is a whole new level, right? And even the odd time when you're working at home for a week or you're not traveling or whatever, this was a very stressful week for me, right? School's out. I'm educator in chief during the day. Obviously, things have to happen around the house. When there are more people in the house, there seems to be this like increase in the number of dirty dishes, right? So that has to get taken care of, right? So, the stay-at-home dad thing, I mean, I've had to reschedule my morning meetings going forward because it's sort of like, look, I have responsibilities now that while they may have existed before, they're now thrust upon me in a more immediate fashion, right? I've got to get the breakfast going. I've got to do the education and get the school stuff squared away. And then I've got to do my work, right? So personally, I mean, I'll also say, I happen to like the travel, right? I enjoy travel. And yeah, I take a break from it every now and then, but faced with the notion that, potentially weeks, months of this, and, again, by the time this is out, it may be, completely obsolete what I just said, but I think it's added a new dimension in how I think about my work and how I engage with my work. So that's sort of my personal impact. I don't know, Carol, you mentioned being in Paris when this happened. I imagine that was pretty scary.
Yeah, I don't actually have kids, so being home is not the same impact. For me, it's not being on the road that feels so bizarre. I'm normally on the road at least 3 weeks out of the month. It's rare that I'm home and the idea that I've been home this long is bizarre. I went into self-quarantine after the little Paris experience because there were all sorts of odd connections of outbreaks that I was close enough to be concerned about. And so I've had more time one-on-one with my partner here than we've had in years. And while most of the time that's fantastic, there are also moments when we think, a little breathing room would probably be good for both of us. And I know he's used to having a lot more alone time because I'm not here. And I'm certainly used to just checking out. And, when I'm on the road, I go into my laptop, never to be seen again until I come back home. And now it's like, oh yeah, okay, let's go have dinner. And oh yeah, there's lunch. Okay. And it's such a different rhythm to the day and the focus is so differently organized. And I find it takes conscious effort and reminding that this is the new norm.
Yeah.
And just get used to it, because if I fight it, it's going to make me crazy. And if I worry about when the next time I'm getting on a plane is, that's going to make me crazier. So I'm just going with, this is the new norm, find a way to make this work, and assume it's going to be until further notice.
Yeah, and I should have mentioned my wife her facilities are still open. She's still working this week. So week 1 of the quarantine, I didn't have that, hey, I need some space issue. But going forward, I can see how, we're going to need to find our own parts of the house to escape to.
Yeah.
Bless her heart. Anyway, Phil, I know you've got kids. I know you're you're not too far away from me physically, but I know social distancing, we haven't been able to get together in a while. How is this impacting, how is this impacting you?
Yeah. So for me, I had moved in my office into the house some time back. So that part's the same, except now I'm sharing an open floor plan office space with, kids and pets and interactions and all kinds of stuff that I wasn't normally expecting. So, and again, like you, my wife's been out this week, but I suspect that she will soon be in the house more. So again, we're going to figure out how we find space. So that might be good, because it might be a chance for us to kind of get through some of that stuff where we're not used to doing that. We'll just have to figure that out, won't we? But I've also noticed that, this is a stressful time for all of us. We've all kind of grokked to that already, but we're taking it at different loops, right? So I might be at a high point where I feel like I've got it really well situated, and my wife or my kids might be really stressed out at that moment. So then you got to deal with them, and then it kind of levels itself at a new spot where you're thinking, oh my God, I had this worked out. Poof, now I don't. And then they've got it worked out, and you're feeling it. So it just kind of goes back and forth. So I think you have to give everybody a lot of room. And as I have said to my kids, you got to just be able to tolerate people turning in B+ work. It's just good enough is going to have to be good enough for the moment.
Yeah. And I mean, that's a really good point. I mean, there are all kinds of new routines that have to be established here, right? I mean,
I had all that. Yeah.
I used to plan my Friday afternoons around, carpool pickup. And now, like, if I had a meeting, it would be, in the car sometimes during that time period, but that's not happening anymore. So, I mean, it's shifted all sorts of things around. Shashi, I know, I mean, you've got a beautiful little daughter. She's
Yes.
into Taekwondo. That's all been disrupted. And you're kind of, I mean, of all of us, you're closer to, you're across the river from New York, right? So
Yes.
that's kind of a hot spot right now,
Exactly. So, it's as far as work is concerned, there's not major change on the way we work because I've not been traveling for a couple of months, so that kind of is not a problem. Only challenge I'm facing from work standpoint is the bandwidth because of it's getting hogged by online schools and people staying indoors watching videos and stuff like that, and then that kind of hogs the bandwidth. That was the major one. Other than that, it becomes like our schools are very well prepared, so that way teachers have been getting on, they're giving them homework, but that school like kind of interactive school gets over around 12:30 or so. After that, the homework, then I have to become a taekwondo instructor. So I become an IT support guy of the house who is supporting them, configuring everything. And then I have to become a taekwondo not an instructor, but somebody who coordinates on behalf of the coach, who is live streaming the exercises. Because she competes at a serious level. We went to Florida for a US Open tournament. So if she is not, practicing, or if she's not doing anything for a couple of weeks, it's a major setback to her. Hopefully tournament opens up, nationals in July. So playing multiple roles. I won't say it's a drastic change. I'm enjoying it, honestly speaking.
I think, we've talked about ways that people can adjust to these new routines and some of the tech they can use. There was one thing I failed to mention. I mean, the memes are always on the internet is about how much alcohol everyone's consuming now. But, I went sort of a different way, which may surprise people that know anything about me. I took up yoga, like online yoga, right? And I was like, nah. Actually, it's surprisingly effective at, controlling stress and all those healthy things. And I think, part of this is going to be, however long this goes, part of this is going to be a mind game, right? A mind exercise of how do I avoid, overstressing on some of these things while also making sure that I engage in the things that I need to engage in. So guys, I really appreciate the time. Carol, again, welcome. So Carol Hamilton, we had Phil Yanoff, and we had Shashi Sharmali. I'm Chris Lockhart. So if you could, where's the favorite? Is it up here or is it up here? The like, it's up this
Somewhere
way.
here. Somewhere here.
Like the podcast. Visit us at consultantsayingthings.com. And definitely on the YouTube channel, you can see all of our old videos and other relevant topics. So appreciate it. Thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.